Hi, my name is Luna, and 2 years ago, I made a decision that would change the course of my life. It was a cold October evening when the phone rang. I was making tea, the wind tapping gently against the window pane like an old friend trying to get my attention. I remember the smell of cinnamon and the sound of autumn leaves brushing against the porch. I answered the phone and heard my daughter-in-law Vanessa on the other end, crying. They were being evicted. The landlord's selling the house. She sobbed. We have 30 days. We don't know where to go. I didn't even hesitate. Of course, I said. Come stay here. The house is big. There's plenty of space for everyone. I meant it. I really did. My home was quiet ever since my husband passed. Too quiet. The silence had settled in like dust. In the corners of every room. So when Jake, my youngest son, and his family needed help, my heart opened without a second thought. Family is family. That's what I believed. They arrived the following Saturday. Just as the sky broke into a soft drizzle, Jake was unloading boxes from a rented U-Haul. Vanessa stood in the hallway, her eyes scanning the space like someone sizing up a long-term rental. Ellie and Micah, my grandkids, ran through the rooms with a kind of joy only kids can summon, laughing as they explored every corner like it was a new adventure. Jake hugged me tightly. Mom, we're so grateful. It'll just be a couple of months until we get on our feet. Vanessa smiled and nodded, her eyes still studying the living room. The layout, the lighting, the furniture. At the time, I didn't think much of it. She'd just lost her home. Of course she'd be trying to picture how things might fit. I gave them the upstairs, the 2 bedrooms, and the smaller bathroom. I stayed downstairs, in the room just off the kitchen. It wasn't a sacrifice. I was happy to help. For the first few weeks, things were quiet. We didn't see much of each other. Jake worked long shifts at the auto shop. Vanessa was looking for a new job after the dental clinic where she worked shut down. The kids were in school. I went about my days as usual, gardening, reading, keeping the house in order. And honestly, I liked the noise. The footsteps on the stairs. The sound of cartoons on weekend mornings. Laughter during dinner. It reminded me of when my boys were little, when the house was full of life. But you know, when something small shifts, it's easy to ignore it. Until those small things start stacking up. The first sign, the living room. One afternoon, I walked in to find Vanessa moving the couch. The same couch my late husband picked out. The one that had always sat by the window, catching the morning sun. Oh, Luna, do you mind? She asked, already halfway through sliding it across the floor. It's just better for the kids' homework space. The lighting's better on this wall. I paused for a second. That couch had been in the same spot for 15 years. But I smiled and nodded. Sure, I said. Whatever's easier for the kids. Because that's what you do when you love someone. You adjust. At least, that's what I thought back then. But that was just the beginning. And if I had known how quickly things would change, how I would start to feel like a stranger in my own home, I might have answered that phone call very differently. It's funny how things unravel not all at once, but little by little. Like a loose thread you barely notice until the whole sweater's falling apart. At first, it was the little things. One morning, I walked into the kitchen and noticed my mother's embroidered table runner. Something she'd hand-stitched for me decades ago was gone. In its place was a bright, plastic tablecloth covered in cartoon animals and juice stains. Oh, I put it away, Vanessa said when I asked. The kids are messy. I didn't want them to ruin it. I nodded. That's thoughtful, I said. But when I went to retrieve it from the drawer a few days later, it wasn't there. I searched every cabinet, every linen shelf. Nothing. That table runner had been with me through holidays, birthdays, quiet mornings with a book and coffee. Now it had vanished like it never existed. And slowly, so did other things. The fridge began to look different. My shelves of kefir, fresh vegetables, and homemade leftovers were pushed aside for microwave meals. String cheese, and colorful cereal boxes. Soda took over the middle shelf. My containers of chopped greens were shoved into the back. Behind packs of frozen waffles and plastic tubs of fruit punch, I'd reach for something I'd bought only to find it gone. Oh, I didn't know that was yours. Vanessa would say, we thought it was for the family. And the language started to shift. Not mine. Ours. Our fridge is running low. We need more snacks for the kids. Luna, can you tidy up after yourself? The kids are around. Tidy up after myself. I've kept this house spotless for 20 years. But now, if I left my teacup in the sink, or a spoon from my yogurt, Vanessa would raise her eyebrows like I'd committed a felony. Then came the music. I've always loved playing classical music while I clean or cook. It soothes me. Reminds me of my husband. He loved Chopin. But one day, I was humming along to a soft piano piece when Micah barged into the kitchen. Grandma, can you turn that off? It's boring. Vanessa didn't say a word. She didn't scold him or correct him. She just kept scrolling on her phone. The next time, I didn't bother turning on the radio. Outside, my garden was changing too. For over 10 years, I tended to those rose bushes. Rain or shine, I'd be out there pruning, feeding, talking to them like they were old friends. They were my therapy. One Saturday morning, I stepped outside and froze. My roses gone. Dug up. In their place was a half-built swing set and a bag of plastic toys. The kids need somewhere to play. Vanessa said cheerfully when I asked what had happened. You can always replant the roses somewhere else. But there was nowhere else. That was their spot. Their home. Just like this was supposed to be mine. I tried to tell myself I was overreacting. That I should be grateful. My house was full again. There were footsteps. Laughter. Birthday candles. And pizza nights. Isn't that what I'd wanted after all the silence? But what no one tells you is that there's a difference between having a full house and feeling like you belong in it. By the time spring rolled around, I found myself tiptoeing around my own home. I'd wake up early just to use the bathroom before the kids did. I'd avoid the living room because it didn't feel like mine anymore. My favorite chair had been moved. My books tucked away in a closet. I had become polite, careful, invisible. I wasn't Luna, the woman who'd lived here for 2 decades, who'd nursed her husband through cancer in that very bedroom, who'd buried him and grieved in these walls. No. Now I was Grandma Luna. An extra. A relic. A nice lady who lived downstairs and tried not to get in the way. And I started to wonder how much of yourself can you lose before you stop recognizing who you are. I didn't realize how far things had gone until the day I couldn't even have a cup of tea in my own living room. It was a Sunday morning in late April. The first warm day after a stubborn winter. I had spent the night tossing and turning, thinking about how disconnected I'd become from the life happening in the very house I owned. So I decided, finally, to do something that used to bring me joy. I wanted to invite a few friends over. Nothing fancy, just Mira from next door, Clara from church, and Mrs. Fletcher, my old coworker from the clinic. We hadn't gathered in months. I missed the gentle rhythm of real conversation. The kind that comes with age, shared laughter, and a bit of lemon cake. So that Thursday evening, while Vanessa was washing dishes, I brought it up gently. "Vanessa," I said, "I was thinking of having a small tea with some friends on Sunday. Just the three of them. We'll sit in the living room for a couple of hours. Nothing disruptive." She didn't answer right away. Just kept scrubbing the plate like it had done something personal to her. Then she said, without looking at me, "Sunday, yes." I replied, "They're all free that day. We're actually having a birthday thing for Ellie." I blinked. Ellie's birthday is in June. There was a pause. A small flicker in her eyes. But she didn't correct herself. "The kids are used to relaxing in the living room on weekends," she said flatly. "Maybe another day." I backed away. "Okay. I'll move it to next weekend." But the next day, Ellie herself asked me if I was coming to her friend's birthday party next month. There was no celebration this Sunday. Vanessa had just lied to keep me out of my own space. I waited until Friday to ask again. Calmly. Directly. "Would it be okay if I use the living room this Sunday? Clara has a bad back and it's hard for her to sit at the kitchen table." Vanessa glanced up from her phone and narrowed her eyes like I'd asked her to tear down a wall. "Luna, why are you always pushing? We need the living room too. You already have your kitchen. Isn't that enough?" My kitchen. A room I now used like a visitor asking for permission to heat soup. Hertonastung. But I pressed on. "I haven't had my friends over in months. You have people over almost every Saturday. That's different." She snapped. "My friends are part of the family. Yours just sit around gossiping about the past and complaining about young people. They're not just old ladies. They're my friends." Vanessa let out a sharp, sarcastic laugh. "Well, maybe next time you should meet them at a park or a senior center. This is a home with children, not a retirement lounge." And then, without warning, it happened. Something inside me cracked. "This is my house," I said. Steady but firm. "I've lived here for 23 years. I have the right to use the living room whenever I choose." Vanessa slammed the dish towel onto the counter. Red in the face. "You keep acting like you're the only one who matters. We live here too. Luna. Jake. The kids. Me, we have lives. You think we don't deserve space?" She took a step closer. "If you don't like how we live, maybe you should be the one to leave." For a moment, the room was still. Even the refrigerator stopped humming. And all I could think was, did she really just tell me to leave? My own home. No shouting. No crying. Just a sharp, icy realization I was no longer welcome here. And that was the moment something in me changed forever. I don't remember what I ate for dinner that night. I barely remember sleeping. All I remember is waking up the next morning with a quiet, terrifying clarity I had to take my life back. Not with anger. Not with yelling. Not even with a fight. But with something stronger. A decision. That day, when Jake and Vanessa left for work and the kids were at school, I opened the hallway closet and pulled out a small metal box. It had our mortgage papers, my husband's will, and most importantly, the deed to the house. My name. No one else's. I sat at the kitchen table, hands shaking slightly, and started Googling local real estate offices. My heart beat like I was committing a crime. But what I was really doing was saving myself. I found a small firm downtown called Oak Ridge Realty and scheduled a meeting with a woman named Patricia for the following morning. I told everyone I was going to my doctor's appointment. In the office, Patricia welcomed me with a kind smile and a warm voice. She listened as I described my home: 4 bedrooms, 2 baths, a large yard, updated plumbing, and close to a good school district. Her eyes lit up. "That's going to move fast," she said, "especially in this market." She gave me an initial estimate between $285, $0 and $310. Ling. I blinked. That was more than my husband and I had ever dreamed of when we bought the place 25 years ago. I didn't tell anyone what I was doing. Not yet. It wasn't fear that held me back, it was resolve. I needed to make sure everything was lined up first. If I was going to leave, I wasn't going to tiptoe out the back door. I was going to walk out with my head high. A week later, Patricia called. "I've got a couple," she said. "The Baxters. School teacher and a banker. 2 little ones. They've been looking for a place with a yard and a garden for months. They saw the photos and fell in love. I scheduled a showing for Saturday morning while telling Vanessa I'd be visiting Mira to help her reorganize her medicine cabinet. At exactly 10 a.m., the Baxters arrived smiling. Polite. The kind of people who said please and thank you. Who wiped their shoes at the door without being asked. They walked through the house with wonder in their eyes. The same way I had once done with my husband. They admired the kitchen, the hardwood floors, the garden. Selena Baxter even paused at the back porch and said, "I can already imagine our kids chasing fireflies out here." I swallowed a lump in my throat. They made an offer that afternoon, $295. Ling. In cash. No contingencies. They could close in 2 weeks. I said yes. And just like that, my escape hatch was real. The next few days were a blur of signatures, bank transfers, and documents. Patricia handled most of it. I just kept my secret close, wrapping it around me like armor. I watched Jake come home from work, still covered in grease from the garage. I listened to Ellie giggle over TikTok videos, and Micah complain about homework. I watched Vanessa rearrange the spice rack as if she owned it. They had no idea. And for the first time in 2 years, that made me smile. On Thursday night, just before dinner, I set the table like always. Then I looked up and said, as calmly as if I were reading the weather forecast, I sold the house. We close next Friday. The room fell silent. Ellie's fork dropped onto her plate. Jake stared like I'd spoken a foreign language. And Vanessa. Vanessa just blinked. I'm sorry, I added. But I need my life back. And this is how I'm taking it. For a moment, no one spoke. It was like the air had been sucked out of the room. You sold the house? Vanessa finally asked. Her voice thin, like she was trying not to scream. Yes, I said quietly. To a young family. The Baxters. They move in next Friday. Jake stood up so fast his chair scraped the floor. Mom, what are you talking about? You can't just... This is our home. No, I said firmly. It's my home. Legally. Emotionally. For over 2 decades. And for the last 2 years, I've been made to feel like a guest in it. Vanessa's face went pale. Then flushed red. You're kicking us out. The kids, your own family, I'm not kicking anyone out. I replied. I'm moving on. You have 10 days to make arrangements. Micah's eyes welled up. Grandma, where are we going to live? Jake looked at me. Stunned. Why didn't you tell us? Why didn't you say you were unhappy? I laughed. Bitterly. Jake, I've been telling you. In quiet ways. In polite conversations. In the things I didn't say out loud. But you weren't listening. Or maybe you didn't want to. Vanessa leaned forward, her tone sharp. You're being selfish. You're abandoning your family so you can drink tea in peace and hang out with your gossiping old friends. I didn't flinch. No. Vanessa. I'm reclaiming what's mine. My space. My time. My voice. Jake ran a hand through his hair. This is unbelievable. What are we supposed to do? You're both adults. I said. You have jobs. You've had time. 2 years of time. You told me you just needed a few months. Remember. Vanessa opened her mouth to speak. But I cut her off. And don't pretend you were planning to leave. I overheard you telling your friend that I wasn't going anywhere. That you had everything you needed right here. Her eyes darted away. I heard what you said about sending me to a retirement facility. About how it would be better for everyone. About how I'm just old and in the way. Jake looked at her. Stunned. You said that Vanessa crossed her arms. I was worried about her well-being. No. You were planning my removal. I said coldly. And now you're shocked that I decided to remove myself on my terms. Micah started to cry quietly. Ellie sat frozen, trying to process what was happening. I wanted to comfort them, but I also knew they had watched silently. As their mother dismissed and disrespected me again and again, I looked at Jake. I love you. Son. I love the kids. But I won't disappear just to make room for someone else's comfort. Not anymore. Vanessa suddenly softened her voice, switching tactics. Luna. Please. We can fix this. Just cancel the sale. We'll figure something out. We'll give you more space. I'll back off. I smiled gently. No! Vanessa. You already made it clear this wasn't my house anymore. So now. It really isn't. Silence again. Then, with a shaky breath, Jake said, Okay. We'll figure something out. He looked exhausted. Defeated. That night, the house was quiet. No cartoons. No music. Just the sound of cardboard boxes being assembled upstairs. And for the first time in years, I felt at peace. Friday morning came quickly. The house felt different, emptier. Quieter. Not in a lonely way, but in the way a deep breath feels after holding it in for too long. By 10 a.m., I was sitting at the notary's office, my hands resting calmly on a stack of papers. Patricia was there, and so were the Baxters, smiling. Excited. Grateful. The check was signed. The keys exchanged. The house was officially no longer mine. And yet, for the first time in years, I felt like myself again. That afternoon, I returned to the place I would now call home, a 2-bedroom apartment on the second floor of a brick building in the heart of Asheville. It wasn't big. It didn't have a garden or a porch swing. But it had something I hadn't felt in a long time. Freedom. My furniture had already been moved in earlier that morning. A modest cream sofa. A bookshelf full of mystery novels. And the wooden dining table I refused to part with, all arranged just the way I liked. In the kitchen, I unpacked my favorite tea set, the one Vanessa once called too delicate for everyday use. I set it on a linen runner and placed a small vase of fresh lavender in the center. Then I sat and breathed. For the next few days, I did things at my own pace. I went to the local farmer's market and picked up tomatoes still warm from the sun. I baked a peach cobbler. I played classical music in the living room, not through earbuds, but through speakers, loud enough to fill the walls. No one rolled their eyes. No one told me to turn it down. On Sunday, Mira came over with a fresh loaf of banana bread. Clara and Mrs. Fletcher joined us shortly after, each bringing something sweet and familiar. We sat in my small but cozy living room, laughing, reminiscing, sipping tea without watching the clock. At one point, Clara leaned back and sighed. "Luna, it's so peaceful here." I smiled. "It's mine. Every inch." They understood. They didn't need the whole story. Later that week, Logan, my oldest son, called. He'd heard about everything from Jake, who had found a rental on the outskirts of town. "Mom," Logan said, "I should have visited more. I'm sorry. You were busy." "Honey, life gets loud." "Well, I'm thinking about relocating," he said. "Working remote. Maybe moving closer to you." Something inside me warmed. "You'd be welcome. Always." We ended the call with laughter and a promise to meet for dinner soon. And just when I thought life had already begun unfolding again, something else happened. Selena Baxter, the young woman who now lived in my old home, called unexpectedly. "Hi, Luna. I hope you don't mind me reaching out." "Of course not." I said, "Everything going okay with the house?" "Oh yes. It's lovely. But this might sound strange. My Aunt Esther lives in Greenville." She was talking about her friend Mira. "And, well, it turns out, Mira is your friend." "Too," I chuckled. "Small world." "Well," she continued, "we've got a little guest house on the property. If your son Logan ever does move back, we'd love to offer it to him. Just a thought. Good people are hard to find." I thanked her genuinely. And after we hung up, I sat by the window, watching the late autumn sun stretch across the floor. There was no chaos, no tension, just me, my tea, and the life I had chosen for years. I thought letting go of that house would mean letting go of my history. But it turns out, it just made room for my future. Thanksgiving came around faster than I expected. It was my first one alone. No turkey roasting at dawn. No grandkids rushing through the hallway. No folding chairs squeezed around the table. Just me. A pot of butternut squash soup. And a slice of store-bought pumpkin pie. And yet, it wasn't lonely. The apartment smelled like cinnamon. My radio played Ella Fitzgerald. And from my window, I could see leaves falling like golden confetti over the quiet street below. Around Swipe M. Mira knocked on my door, holding a Tupperware full of green bean casserole. Clara followed with a pie. We spent the afternoon eating, talking, and watching an old black and white movie. It was simple, peaceful, exactly what I needed. That evening, I took out a photo album I hadn't opened in years. My husband's smile stared back at me from page after page, standing in front of the house we'd just bought, dancing in the living room, holding Jake as a newborn. I traced the edge of the photo with my finger. I did it. "Love," I whispered. I let go. And not out of spite, not out of bitterness, but out of the understanding that peace sometimes requires departure. A few days later, Logan came by. He'd officially transferred to remote work and had signed the lease on the guest house behind my old home. A full circle moment, wrapped in grace. "I'm glad you're near," I told him. "Me too," he said. "And I'm proud of you." "Mom?" Not everyone has the courage to start over. It hit me then how rare it is for women, especially older women, to reclaim space. Not just physical space, but emotional space. The right to say, "This is enough," without apology. A week after that, Jake called. "Hey, Mom," he said, his voice quieter than usual. "I know it's been a while, and I know we didn't leave things in the best place." I didn't say anything. I just listened. I found a place. Smaller, but cozy. Kids are adjusting. Vanessa's working on herself. And I wanted you to know I get it now. What you did. Why you did it. Tears welled in my eyes. Not from guilt. From relief. "Thanks for saying that," I said. "It means a lot. I hope one day we can all sit down and start fresh. I'd like that," I replied. Whether or not it would happen, I didn't know. But the door wasn't closed. Not anymore. Now, my days look different. I wake up to sunlight spilling through curtains I chose. I eat when I'm hungry, not when someone else tells me dinner's ready. I invite friends over without asking permission. I listen to classical music without headphones. I am not background noise. I am not a burden. I am not invisible. And that's the heart of it. Isn't it sometimes? Reclaiming your life means walking away from the very people you love. Not to hurt them, but to finally stop hurting yourself. People ask me if I regret it. I don't. Because now, when I sit in my quiet apartment, sipping tea and staring out at the trees, I don't feel alone. I feel whole. And if you're reading this, if you've ever felt like a stranger in your own life, then maybe it's time to ask yourself, are you living in your home or just surviving in someone else's?